now Middle East commentator and director of the Council of Arab-British Understanding. Chris Doyle joins us live from London. Chris, good to have you still on the program. I want to get your reaction to this announcement from Donald Trump saying a ceasefire and eventually an end to the war has been agreed. A ceasefire that's going to be phased in over the next couple of hours. Iran is going to start, then Israel is going to join, and then after 24 hours, the war will be over. Your reaction to that?
Well, let's hope this is true, because obviously there's no great prizes in continuing this very destructive war. Everybody in the region, I think, wants to see this end. And I think actually the Israeli leadership needs an off-ramp, and perhaps Donald Trump has actually provided them with one. I think what we have seen, quite frankly, is something that's been pretty choreographed, even perhaps going as far back as the American strikes over the weekend, that there probably was an understanding between the Americans and the Israelis that Trump wanted to get to this sort of situation, and that if he took out those nuclear facilities and used those mega bunker-busting bombs, that then Israel would have to agree to his timetable for a ceasefire. I think that would probably best explain why Trump signed up to this. He's somebody who's normally averse to getting trapped into a war like this. He would not have liked the idea of getting sucked in. And certainly tonight, those Iranian missiles that were launched towards the American air base Al Udeid in Qatar, obviously with a lot of warning given to the Qataris, to the Americans, this was not a surprise attack. I think that was clearly a mechanism to allow the Iranians to let off steam, to demonstrate that they could hit back, save face, and then we could move towards a ceasefire. Now, things can go wrong because, as you've just reported, Israel is still carrying out attacks. Those attacks could go spectacularly wrong. They could hit a very sensitive site where a lot of people are killed, making it harder for the Iranians to commit to that ceasefire that Donald Trump has promised. There may be some playing games over the exact timing of the ceasefire as well, you know, not wishing to be totally within Donald Trump's timetable. These are parties that have no trust with each other. So it's welcome news. Let's hope we not only get to a ceasefire, but actually credible peace talks that ends this once and for all, and that we don't have to get back to this situation again.
I'm still wondering, though, how much can we actually trust Donald Trump at this point? You know, he gave Iran 2 weeks. He said he was going to think for 2 weeks and he was going to let Iran come to the sort of negotiating table. But then those 2 weeks turned into just 2 days, and then he attacked Iran. And we also know that during that attack, they used decoy flights to trick the Iranians and trick the world into thinking that the flights were heading to Guam when in fact they were heading towards Iran. Can we trust what he's saying right now, or is this just another decoy for us to sort of think that there's a peace now on the table and then there could be more strikes happening instead?
I think that's unlikely. I think that, you know, based on what we have seen in terms of the Iranian response, which was very much the low end of the scale in terms of what they could do, even the statement of the Iranian supreme leader, all of these things combined with Trump's, you know, allergic predisposition to these long-term wars, I think it makes sense what he is doing. And I think by having taken out those nuclear facilities, it provides the Israelis a reason to get out of this conflict.
I'm also wondering about these so-called 400 kilos of highly enriched Iranian uranium that no one really seems to know where it is. If Iran, in fact, moved it somewhere else, if it's buried deep underground under that Fordow nuclear facility, is that a big headache for the U.S. administration that there might still be 400 kilos of highly enriched uranium somewhere out and about in Iran?
This is something that's going to have to be answered to satisfy the Israelis, to satisfy the Americans. But it may be that they've already taken care of it. It may be that part of those talks will be to put that enriched uranium beyond use, that under inspection. I mean, there are other ways than continuing strikes to do this. Maybe it's a realization that from the Americans and the Israelis that the Iranians have hidden it well before this 12-day war began, and they're not going to be able to find it by bombing from the sky, so they've got to negotiate their way to handle this.
So I'm just also wondering about what kind of contacts do you think have been going on here, sort of behind the scenes between Israel and Iran and the U.S.? Obviously, there must have been some kind of coordination, possibly even as you're alluding to, those Iranian strikes on the U.S. base in Qatar, that they knew what was going to happen, that they were sort of all on board. Is it Steve Witkoff who's been orchestrating all of this, or is it back channels, or is it all just sort of happening organically by itself?
I think it's probably been quite well organized. I think this has the timing of all of this seems to be fairly well planned. So I think it's probably not just sort of come about by happenstance. I think this has been truly well choreographed. Obviously not direct contacts between Israel and Iran. I think that would be very unlikely, but through the Americans or through another party, maybe even including the likes of the Omanis, who knows? But whatever, I think that we can hopefully see a situation, or at least we get to a ceasefire, hopefully the end of the war, and even then to build a proper agreement that can actually satisfy all parties and get us away from this conflict.
Do you see this as a win for all parties, for Netanyahu to have achieved some of his war goals, for Donald Trump to have achieved whatever his war goals were, and even for the Iranians to almost reach a new platform to build new diplomatic talks on? Or is there one party that is sort of coming out of this from a weaker point?
Well, I think the Iranians have been weakened. They've obviously suffered significant attacks from the Israelis and now the Americans. I don't think there's any getting away from that. And a lot of their military has been degraded. They lost a lot of commanders, a lot of nuclear scientists. So you've got to say that that is the case. I don't think you can say the same about the Israelis. For sure, they've had some missile strikes. There's been some economic damage, but not really much beyond that.